Welcome to SoundBreaker. I'm your host, Bob Shammy, and we're about to break the silence. Join me as we go behind the scenes and meet some of the most influential names in the music industry. Get ready for remarkable success stories that break the norms and defy the odds. From dreams to success, from challenges to victory. An exclusive backstage pass into the lives of music trailblazers as they create their own path to success. This is SoundBreaker. Welcome to SoundBreaker. On today's episode, we're talking to Tracy Maddux, who is a groundbreaker in the music industry. Thanks for joining us. And for listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and tell us about what do you do? A little bit, not so much.
Sure. Well,
we're going to dive into it later on.
Okay. Well, thanks.
My pleasure.
First of all, for having me on SoundBreaker. Great to be here. A little bit about me. I am a music industry veteran of, depending on how you count it, about 25 years. And I most recently served as Chief Commercial Officer at Downtown Music. Before that was the CEO of CD Baby for about a decade and led it through some interesting times. And currently taking a little break, still advising Downtown and a few other companies, but really on my first professional sabbatical.
Great. I don't want to get into it yet, but I would say that pretty much you wrote history twice in your career. We're going to get into that in a minute. So I want to go back, if you can take us back. Let's start at the beginning of your career. Can you share your background from your earlier days in the industry to become the CEO at CD Baby?
Sure. I left a comfortable corporate finance gig at Intel in 2021. 2001 to join a company called Logic General that at the time was making boxed software. Do you remember when little shiny disk used to ship with every printer and every piece of software clients like Microsoft would use? I actually bought the company from the founder, and we had all this excess capacity as applications started to be delivered online. And so we reached out to the music industry and found that there are plenty of independent labels that needed those types of services. And so we pressed early copies for indie musicians like Presidents of the United States, Death Cab for Cutie, and the respective labels, and found a real niche there in independent music. And kind of grew that company, sold it in 2009, took a break from the industry, and then jumped in at the invitation of Tony Van Veen, who was the longtime and still is CEO at Disc Makers and AVL, to join as Chief Operating Officer in 2010. And that's how I landed at CD Baby. And certainly the background was on the manufacturing side of the compact disc.
Very interesting. I'm impressed, my friend. I'm really impressed. A few years later, a pivotal moment in your career was the acquisition of CD Baby by Downtown Music Holdings. And can you take us through the strategic steps you took as the CEO of CD Baby that led up to that acquisition, or to this acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a decision to make as the CD started to wane. CD Baby was founded as an e-commerce platform where at first artists and labels could sell CDs and then downloads. And then this whole area of distribution and streaming, started to grow, and we saw a shift happening. So we had to make a big decision circa about 2012, 2013, whether we wanted to continue to be a purveyor primarily of CDs in an e-commerce store, or we really wanted to lean into digital distribution and become more of a digital company. And I think we chose well. At the time. The competitor, kind of the emerging competitor, was Bandcamp, very well-run company. I got to know Ethan Diamond a little bit in that process and wanted to understand where that company was going. And they were going full speed into e-commerce, and they've had a very successful run. A little bit more holistically about rights management and how an artist or label was thinking about publishing. One of the things that we noticed was that a lot of artists never collected their publishing income, failed to register with the PRO, and we're kind of leaving money on the table. And so we struck up a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with then Song Trust, owned by Downtown, and
Mm-hmm.
became a partner in publishing. And so we launched what we called CD Baby Pro, which was powered by Song Trust in
Mm-hmm.
2013. And that business grew really nicely from 2013 till most recently when we put a sunset on it. And so that was the beginning of the relationship with Downtown. We really shifted fully out of e-commerce in 2020, and we closed down the CD Baby online store. Downloads just weren't selling like they used to. And more
Mm-hmm.
recently, CD Baby closed its physical offering, so it's out of the physical business now. It really has been remade as a
For good.
digital business.
Yes.
In
Mm-hmm.
2019 or late 2018, as we were going into a sale process with AVL, obviously where there were different paths we could go down. We could sell to another private equity type financial owner, or we could sell to a strategic. And we built a long-term relationship with Justin Kalifowitz, the founder and CEO of Downtown, as well as
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Bergman, who's the current CEO. At the
Mm-hmm.
time was COO and general counsel. And really felt a good fit there, both from a strategic standpoint, with a cultural standpoint, a real
Yeah.
music company that really
Yes.
cares about the artist and the rights holder. And so we felt it was a good match. And in that process, as a management team, as a leadership team at CD Baby and AVL, kind of pushed our owners in that direction. And luckily, we were able to come to a conclusion and close that in the first quarter of 2019.
Wonderful. I was gonna ask. I was hesitant to ask this question, if it's really outdated. But how was the transition from physical when you were at CD Baby to digital? Was it something that kind of foreseen, or was it like, hey, we have to do it. We really need to jump on it right away?
I learned this in in running a disc manufacturing plant. It's very difficult to invest in a declining business.
Yeah.
You can certainly uh, be more efficient, and I would say C Baby's always was always led, with the
Yeah.
kind of an efficiency mindset. And you can also kind of meet that niche demand. And certainly we saw growth in things like vinyl albums. But I think my experience in leading a CD manufacturing company, a disc manufacturing company, was it is a much easier path to invest and to reposition a company in something that will grow as opposed to something that's declining. And it
Hmm.
really was as simple as that. We saw the growth in streaming coming. It was all about consumer behavior. More
Hmm.
people were listening and consuming music via streaming. Fewer people were listening and
Hmm.
consuming via vinyl and CD. And so we made a bet on the growth part of the market, really powered by consumer behavior. And I think that played out really well. Now, a physical strategy as pursued by a Bandcamp is perfectly good. It's a little bit more niche focused, and I think its growth prospects were limited. But
Hmm.
strategy is just a fork in the road, and the fork we chose was more of a digital. And I think that we really kind of formalized that in 2012, 2013 when we launched the
Yes.
publishing business and became a
Uh,
services provider.
just to go back for a minute, where you were at Disc Makers, I would say I remember Disc Makers, and I had a label, and I know of them very well. I think they had even one of their, I'm not sure, main office. It was Midtown, correct, on 20 something Street. Am I
That's
right?
right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, they were I think one of the leading. I'm not saying the only one, but the leading ones that they actually an artist could walk in or call them and manufacture 100 pieces. I remember they were like nobody else was doing it. They would do the whole thing for you, the artwork, the manufacturing, and I think they were doing distribution at that time. Am I right or wrong? I'm not 100% sure. Or
They
they had
were.
to deal with some. Yeah,
The business was always a really great marriage between the
yeah,
physical operation and CD Baby being the
yeah,
distribution arm. And in fact,
yeah,
when Disc Makers bought CD Baby back in
yeah,
2009,
yeah.
it was just kind of the continuation of another relationship, and that was being an outlet for digital distribution and e-commerce. And I can't say enough about the team there at Disc Makers, led by Tony
I
Van
mean,
Veen, who's both been
yes,
a mentor and a friend for the last 15 years, and really still in the business. If you're an artist and you need vinyl, Disc
yeah,
Makers is a great source, and I know they aim
yeah.
to be the leading provider of vinyl in North America this year.
Amazing, amazing. Your transitions. Your role extended beyond CD Baby, leading Downtown and its many ventures. Could you please walk us through the experience, especially when it comes to a complex integration of brands like Fuga and Curve?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, we really started the process before the downtown acquisition.
Yeah,
We did a number of acquisitions, the biggest of which was the acquisition of Audio Micro in
yeah,
2017, and we onboarded a couple companies in that particular transaction, including Dashco, which is now Artist and Label Services at Downtown, and also AdRev, which is part of the Fuga offering. And specifically,
yes.
we were trying to accomplish there at AVL before the downtown acquisition was to extend the CD Baby offering into label services. So to be able to provide the same services we were providing to artists, to independent labels.
Hmm.
And in the case of AdRev, to be better at YouTube monetization. So collecting the money that flows through YouTube. And that's what that AdRev did at the time.
Yes.
And so it
Uh-huh.
was more of a kind of a natural iteration post the downtown acquisition of AVL, which included CD Baby,
Mm.
Dashco, and AdRev, to continue that streak and think about more broadly how do we become a modern music company and a services provider that is ubiquitous and indispensable to to
Hmm.
any kind of a rights owner. Our first major acquisition post the close of AVL was Fuga, which Downtown
Uh-huh.
acquired in the first quarter
Fuga.
of 2020. Right before the
Fuga, what was
pandemic.
it? 19 or
Um,
20? Oh, 20. Yes, 2020. Yeah,
it was we closed in
I remember.
January 2020. Um, and what a great leadership team, led by Peter Van Ryan. And when you think about that team, big swaths of
Yeah,
downtown are now run by the individuals that came to downtown in that acquisition, including Peter,
yeah,
as well as Jan Peter Kirstens, who's the CFO of downtown at the holding company level. A great team, good
yeah,
people, really great services. Again, indispensable to
yeah.
independent artists and labels. We did a series of smaller acquisitions, including an audio recognition company in France called Symbols, a ad tech company out of LA called Foundy. And those principles are still
Hmm.
there at downtown operating their particular competencies. And then in last year, so 2022, we closed the acquisition of Curve Royalty Systems, which really is the leader in processing royalties for independent labels. And I really got to know Tom and Richard, the founders there, and their capabilities quite
Hmm.
well. And really the last few years has been integrating these businesses in the primarily the B2B side of downtown, and going to market with a consolidated offer under Peter Van Ryan's leadership. I can't say enough about the
Hmm.
entrepreneurs who joined the team through those acquisitions and the teams that they lead. And I can't say enough positive about Peter and Fuga and what is now Downtown Music.
I mean, downtown has a very extensive, large team right now. From what I heard, a big team of coming from different diverse team. They come in from different aspects of the music business. And should I say, I don't know if it's fair to say, is downtown Fuga and all of that becoming a three? It's coming becoming an
I think that is fair
operation
to
in the
say. I
industry.
mean, yeah, absolutely. There isn't much that the company doesn't do. It doesn't have a merch solution. It doesn't
Maybe a
necessarily
sync
have a live
company
solution.
or a
Yeah,
sync
absolutely.
company.
In sync,
Yeah,
in publishing,
yeah.
in distribution, in tech services, and royalty collection, you name it. The
Hmm.
company is somewhere involved there as a service provider. And the other thing that you might notice about the acquisitions that the company did, I
Hmm.
mentioned the UK,
Yes.
Amsterdam, so the Netherlands, so that's where Fuga is based, and
Yeah.
France. I mean, it's really become a global company, and I think at this point. More than half of its employees are outside the United States. So really what Downtown's doing, not just building a 360 services company, but building a global company.
Yes. Yes. And I think their arm of distribution, Fuga, become the leading independent aggregator out there. I know we're not going to take away from any of the other great aggregators out there, like the Orchard or Believe Digital or so forth. But I would say you guys leading the spot in aggregation as far as this, music distribution.
I believe that to be true. I mean, I think across the enterprise, including what Fuga does and what CD Baby does, we're
Yeah,
touching something like 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 copyrights,
amazing.
sound recordings. And so it is a scaled operation, and I
Yeah,
think it's very important to the music industry, and more than just the independent releases. I mean, Fuga is now powering some pretty sizable labels, and even in some cases, we are across the enterprise providing services to some of the majors and
you are.
companies like Hypnosis and BMG. And so,
Mm.
again, that idea of ubiquity and becoming not just a global company, but one that's providing all services to all kinds of music rights holders.
Hmm. You mentioned earlier Bandcamp, and Bandcamp is owned by, was purchased recently by Songtrader. Paul Wilshire. I'm sure you heard about that.
Yeah, one of the more interesting
Yes,
acquisitions, maybe going
yes,
back to the Epic Games
yes,
purchase, which I think was a big surprise. I don't know which
yes,
was a bigger surprise, Epic or Songtrader.
yeah,
It definitely kind of fills a hole in that portfolio that Paul
yes.
and Songtrader are
Uh,
building, and it historically has been a great company.
Absolutely. Um, Andrew Bergman mentioned your incredible contributions to downtown culture and growth, which I 100% agree with. Knowing the impact you had, what was your main focus while leading the ship at downtown or the whole?
It comes down to people and teams, and the place I get the most joy in work is seeing people develop and seeing teams work together. And so,
Yeah,
whether it was building a team at CD Baby or integrating a team from Audio Micro, or one of the subsequent acquisitions that we did, it really is. Any business that's providing services is people driven. It's not about the technology.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
necessarily just about the strategy. It's about the people, and underneath that's culture. And so, Andrew was very
yeah.
kind in those parting words, and so he and I certainly have built a great friendship over the last more than a decade working together versus partners, and then as my boss. And I think what he would say about me if he was kind of putting another sentence on that is that I really bet on and believe in the people in the business, and that's so true. I think it's all built on human capacity and the continual development of it. And if we're not doing that as
Yes,
leaders in business, we're not doing our jobs.
absolutely. Great shout out for Andrew. We need to get him on the show, I guess, after this. That's an incredible journey you had so far, Tracy. The music industry is known for its challenges and setbacks. Can you share a difficult moment you faced in your career, and how did you overcome it or overcome it?
Managing a
Excuse me.
company, yeah, managing a company during a pandemic is
Yeah.
it was crushing. I mean, we had just completed the acquisition of Fuga. We had a couple other acquisitions in
Hmm.
process, and suddenly everything changed. And um, unable to travel, unable to meet in person. It's really hard to be a people company when you're not, present with one another to work through the hard things. And so in my 25 years of leading companies and managing people, I'd never encountered anything like that. The isolation of it, dealing with, what seemed to be one crisis after another in a time of pandemic when we're all working remotely was a new challenge for me. And I think everybody in the industry. I had some experience with distress management previously in my career, closing plants and selling off assets for companies, but nothing like the isolation of trying to lead in a world crisis. And it's one I hope not to repeat. And that I would say is the biggest challenge. But specific to the music industry, I think the challenge that we all face today in this rapid
Hmm.
proliferation of assets is it's around the quality of the data around music, or what people refer to as metadata. Yeah, when I talk
Metadata,
about
yes.
this, and I am passionate about hygienic metadata, I think people tend to, their eyes tend to glaze over, like, what is he talking about? But when you think about it, like, how is music discovered? How is it monetized? How do rights holders actually get paid for their work? If the underlying metadata in music
Metadata.
isn't appropriate,
Yes.
isn't right, it's simply you're unable to collect what's due to you. And so I think, artists and art, they should focus on making music. They should focus on making great music. But the business people in the industry, we need to be focused on making sure that metadata is clean, and that the DSPs like Spotify and Apple have everything they need to know about that music. And certainly, given the fact that there's over 100 million tracks out there on the services now, and maybe another 30 million being delivered every year, we've got to do better as an industry.
So what are you saying? What I'm gathering, that the metadata is still an issue, a big issue in the music industry, whether it's the distributors, the label they're facing, or the DSPs.
Yeah, I would throw one more service type organization in there, the PROs or CMOs. I mean, those that represent the original songs, the compositions, and those that are monetizing the sound recording need to get on the same page about marrying the composition metadata as well as the sound recording metadata, and we all have a role in it. And I think historically everybody's kind of pointed the finger at the distributor, and certainly a large part of the responsibility lies there. But everybody in the music industry and every part of the ecosystem, from the sound recording to the composition, have a role in making sure that we fix this problem.
Yes, I mean, hey, AI could be the solution.
100%. That's one of the things I'm spending some time doing in my convalescence, is thinking about and writing on AI. And this AI is certainly a potential solution here. I know of a couple of industry consortia that are focused around the fraud issue in music, and I know AI is coming to play a part there, and to identify, what I'll call anomalous behavior of tracks. When suddenly you see 1 million streams on a song that had never been listened to, you gotta wonder, right? And so, large data sets require lots of technology, and underlying that technology is predictive analytics, AI, to figure out what's going on here. And so, I'm really bullish on AI as a remedy for what's missing and what's broken, frankly, in the music industry, whether it's the metadata issues that we face or the fraud issues that will continue to be
absolutely
a siphon of income from legitimate rights holders.
Yes. And as you mentioned in your posting today, you said on LinkedIn, you mentioned that, AI is not a threat if it's used the right way, in the right, if it with the right hands. Like everything else, I feel like everything else in the business, I think we should embrace it. Yes, there's a lot of negative publicity on it, and there is positive. I'm in the positive side. I think AI need to be embraced because it's a tool to help us advance and progress and get things done better and more control, gain more control of it. That's my personal opinion on it, on AI.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of hand-wringing about the training of AI models using quote unlicensed music. It's happened. It's happened by some major firms. I think it's come to light that almost every AI model out there without license has used music to train AI on the creation of new AI music. You really want to kind of wrap your head around this. I was at an AI consortium where we were talking about AI training other AI how to make music from those models, right? Like, so where's the place for human creation in the future? That's the threat. If you've experienced ChatGPT or any other model, you realize there are serious limitations, and certainly creation is one of them. But I'll just make this one point about AI and music is AI don't perform live or sell merch, right? Like, there is a place for the human in the middle of the fan connection. I don't believe it'll ever be supplanted by technology, just by technology, because what we create as humans is human interaction, and that kick we get from seeing somebody perform live, and the T-shirt my wife always has to get every time we go to a live show. I mean, that's just not going to change human behavior.
No.
And so let's harness the technology to solve real problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's solve real problems rather than
one of them
that we imagine.
Yes. Yes. Metadata is one of them. Copyright is one of them. Yes. Very inspiring. In your opinion, what are some common misconceptions people have about the music industry?
Well, here's one that always gets me. Music's a really small industry. I mean, total revenue worldwide, excluding live performance, is about 40 billion. That's between sound recording and publishing, right? I mean, compare that with, let's just say, baked goods, right? Croissants and muffins. That's a half a
Yeah.
trillion dollar industry.
Yes.
Music is one tenth of the size of
Yes.
baked goods. Compare that again
Yeah.
with the advertising industry. It's 1/50th the size. We are, certainly at the intersection of culture and creation, and kind of top of mind for people, but we're also really small. My takeaway from that is that there's plenty of room for the industry to grow, and that if people are really conscientious about their behavior, and
Hmm.
how they're kind of engaging with music, that they ought
Yeah.
to be paying for a premium a subscription service, not a free tier. They ought to be going to shows, not just listening on the radio. They ought to turn off the radio, which doesn't pay recording artists, right? I mean, I think if
Yes.
we're taking this industry seriously, then we're educating consumers about how their behavior either benefits or detriments the artist, and so I think
Yeah.
that's a big misconception. It's also overly complex for its size. I mean, one half of the music industry, the composition side, is regulated in most of the world, and there are so many people in the middle between the artists and the consumer that maybe don't add a lot of value.
Hmm.
And so, I think
Yeah.
those are kind of the two biggest things that I would say. Like, most people don't know about the industry. Years ago, when a friend's kid was graduating from whatever college, they would say, "Hey, Johnny or Jessica, they really want to work in the music industry." My advice would be, don't. It's
Yeah.
it's it's getting smaller. It's tough. Too many middle people.
Yeah.
Now I say, absolutely. What have they got to bring to the table? It's a hard skill like marketing or finance or technology. That's what we need.
Hmm.
Not just the people that are making the music,
Yes.
but the people that are helping the artist to both monetize it and to collect those micro pennies that are streaming and being earned on the social media platforms.
Yes. Social media. These are the new streaming platforms, actually. You know, TikTok and others.
100%. The most
Technology.
popular
Yes.
two streaming services in the world are YouTube and TikTok.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely. Um, Technology has significantly changed the music landscape. I know you lived through the age of physical distribution to digital and now AI. How do you see the industry evolving as a whole in the near future, maybe 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now? I think with your experience, you kind of developed a little bit of a crystal ball, Tracy, fair to say.
Well, first and foremost, I think there'll be more investment in technology. If the major labels or any of the service providers aren't thinking about themselves as music
Mhm.
companies, but also technology companies, I don't think they're thinking right. There's so much investment that needs to happen, infrastructural investment in things like how we collect money and how we identify uses. And so I think there'll be
Mhm.
continued investment in technology. I think it includes technologies like blockchain and like AI, where there's been kind of an unsuccessful history of investment. I think that will continue. I think you'll see more very smart startups in the space, particularly around AI. And I think you'll see consolidation. I think you'll see, companies like Downtown and like the majors acquiring them for, both the teams that build the technology as well as the technology itself.
Mm. Okay. Um, Now that chapter, now this chapter of your life is concluded. What next on the horizon for Tracy? I know you got something
Well, I'm
interesting.
going to go
If
sit
you
on a
can reveal it.
beach. Yeah, I'm gonna go sit on a beach for a couple of months and contemplate the future and read a lot.
Uh-huh.
That's my goal. And I'd like to think that by the middle of next year I'll have figured out what I want to do with my life. At this point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my suspicion is it will have something to do with leading people and helping people develop,
Yes.
whether that's as a consultant or potentially at an operating company at some point in the future. That's really where I get joy is seeing people develop and seeing teams build technology. And I'd like to get back to that at some point, whether that's in the music industry or somewhere else.
Or maybe sit on the board, advisory, advisory board for some tech companies. So are you moving to
I've
Florida?
been Now I'm actually still in the Portland, Oregon area, but
Because
contemplating a move
you
to.
mentioned the beach. I'm like, okay, you got to be going to Florida.
No, my destination of preference is Maui, and I haven't been back
Oh,
to the West Coast since the fires, and so I'm looking forward to getting back and seeing both, how it is, and if I can help in any way, maybe just by being a tourist. Um,
yes. Tracy, a lot of our listeners, after watching this episode, they're going to be inspired. I'm inspired myself. And they want to say, hey, I want to carve my own path in the music industry like Tracy did. Any advice for these people? So, what to look for, what not to look for? I mean, you came from um, from the tech industry, leading, then owning, becoming an owner, and then joining as a CEO. You took many levels in your life and done many acquisitions. You know, so your advice, any tips or advice?
yeah, I mean, the two things I would say is, find something that you're deeply interested in, and I would even use the word love to do, and
Hmm.
do more of it. It feels a lot less like work. And secondly, take risks. It's easy to get a job and to be a professional and put in, your 40 hours a week or whatever your employer requires. It's a lot less easy to take a leap and leave a comfortable situation. And I find that the more uncomfortable I am in whatever situation I'm in, including taking some time off, the more I'm developing as a human. And so you just have to kind of find a way to break through. And anytime you're too comfortable, just have the self recognition to say, it's time for a change. I've been doing this too long. I'm going to go do something else for a bit, and kind of pick that next leap to take. Those are the two
Yes,
things that I've learned a lot in my last couple of careers.
great. Those are valuable insight. I'm sure our listeners will find them incredibly helpful. Before we wrap it up, are there any projects, anything that you would like to talk about, or others to be on the lookout for?
The one thing I'd like to ask, this is my request, is
Please.
I'm writing a series on LinkedIn on AI, and what I find is people are happy to read but not engage. And I'm trying not to be controversial for the sake of it. I'm just kind of writing about what I'm thinking and saying, but like, join me in the conversation. Feel free to join me on LinkedIn. You can follow me. I'm in creator mode. And so anything I write is available for anybody to see. My LinkedIn profile is pretty simple. It's Tracy Maddux, Maddux with a U, Maddux. And if you like, great. But if you engage, I'll be sure to give you a comment or at least a like, and would love to kind of keep the conversation around AI going.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, firstly, thanks for joining us today. It's been a great interview. This concludes today's episode of SoundBreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials to stay tuned for new episode. See.
Thanks, Bob. That was great.
This podcast is presented by Music Dash, world's first AI-powered independent distribution CMS. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the SoundBreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.